Well, good afternoon, everyone. Foreign Minister Shankar, Defense Minister Singh, I am delighted to join my friend, the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, in welcoming you to Washington, and especially grateful for the chance to return the incredibly warm hospitality that you showed me when I visited New Delhi in July. This meeting today marked the fourth U.S.-India 2+2 ministerial dialogue. It built upon the productive meeting last September between Prime Minister Modi and President Biden, as well as the conversation that they had by video today, and on the strong partnership our two countries have developed across nearly 75 years of diplomatic relations. As the world's largest democracy and oldest democracy, we work together every day to deliver opportunity, security, freedom, and dignity to our peoples. We're working closely to combat the COVID-19 pandemic. Scientists and institutions across our countries are developing and producing safe and effective COVID-19 vaccines together. We're working through the Quad Vaccine Partnership with our colleagues in Australia and Japan to make these vaccines available throughout the Indo-Pacific. As of today, Quad partners have collectively provided more than 500 million vaccine doses. We're rapidly expanding production to make more at the Biological E facility in India. We're standing together for our shared commitment to uphold a free, rules-based international order that safeguards sovereignty, territorial integrity, and independence. Today, we reaffirmed our commitment to promoting regional stability, the rule of law, the peaceful resolution of disputes, and to expanding our strategic partnership with ASEAN. Russia's war against Ukraine is an attack on Ukraine's people. It's also an attack on that rules-based order that we both adhere to and defend. The United States will continue to increase our support to the government and people of Ukraine and call on other nations to do the same, just as we call on all nations to condemn Moscow's increasingly brutal actions. Russia's aggression stands in stark contrast to the vision that the United States and India share for a free and open Indo-Pacific. And Russia's actions are having a profound impact not just in Europe and in Ukraine, but around the world. For example, causing food insecurity and rising prices. Ukraine's farmers have been forced to flee or to fight as Russian troops intentionally destroy farmland and equipment and prevent Ukraine from exporting their wheat through Black Sea ports. Our countries are working together to try to bring more food to world markets as well as to the World Food Program. And the United States is also focused on securing more funding for the World Food Program and the UN Food and Agriculture Organization, and producing more fertilizer so that we can help others sustain crop yields in the future. We also discussed our goal of driving inclusive economic growth, both for our countries and across the region. India and the United States already trade to the tune of more than $150 billion each year. But we're deepening that relationship by restarting the U.S.-India commercial dialogue and the U.S.-India CEO Forum later this year, where our private sector partners can offer recommendations to strengthen even more our trade and investment relationship. In the video meeting that they held earlier today, Prime Minister Modi welcomed President Biden's Indo-Pacific Economic Framework Initiative. It can allow us to increase our collaboration across more issues, including digital trade, supply chain resilience, infrastructure, and tax policy. And our countries are working together to tackle the climate crisis. The United States is supporting India's ambitious COP26 clean energy commitments by investing in renewable energy projects and mobilizing private sector financing. We also share a commitment to our democratic values, such as protecting human rights. We regularly engage with our Indian partners on these shared values, and to that end, we're monitoring some recent concerning developments in India, including a rise in human rights abuses by some government, police, and prison officials. In addition to all of these critical issues, I'm pleased that we're increasing cooperation in a number of other key areas, which we focused on today. We're deepening our defense ties, which I know Secretary Austin will speak to. We're expanding our cooperation on development around the world, particularly in Asia and Africa, by working together to carry out disaster relief as well as clean energy and climate-smart agricultural projects. And we're increasing people-to-people ties, which are really at the heart of the entire relationship. We're very lucky in the United States to be home to some 4 million Indian Americans, as well as 200,000 Indians studying in our universities. We have a working group on education and skill training that we formed today that will increase that number by bringing institutions in the United States and India together to develop new joint research and exchange programs. We look forward to welcoming more Indian students and scholars into our communities. We're focusing, among other things, on STEM education. I think this is an area of tremendous potential going forward. Let me just say in conclusion that very soon after our countries established diplomatic relations some 75 years ago, Prime Minister Nehru came to visit the United States. President Truman met him on the tarmac of the airport. And Prime Minister Nehru noted the importance of the moment, saying, and I quote, "I trust that these two republics of the Western world and the Eastern world will find many ways of working together in friendly and fruitful cooperation to our mutual advantage and for the good of humanity." So, for nearly 75 years, we've done just that. And I'm grateful to our partners for making it possible for that friendly and fruitful cooperation to continue and to deepen. And with that, I hand it over to Foreign Minister Jaishankar. Or are we going to Lloyd? Sorry, let me go to Lloyd first.
Thanks,
Secretary of Defense.
Well, Secretary Blinken, Minister Singh, Minister Jaishankar, it's great to be here with you for this fourth U.S.-India 2+2 ministerial dialogue. As my friend Secretary Blinken has rightly noted, we're meeting at an important moment in our partnership. It's been nearly 2 decades since we signed our first bilateral defense framework, and our partnership has grown immensely ever since. Today's meeting shows that we're working together to build one of the most consequential partnerships of our time. We've made important commitments today that will drive technological innovation and cooperation in emerging defense domains, including space and cyberspace. For example, we're committed to launching new defense space exchanges later this year between our Space Command and India's Defense Space Agency. And I'm pleased to announce that just a few moments ago, we signed a bilateral space situational awareness arrangement. And this will support greater information sharing and cooperation in space. We're also deepening our cooperation in cyberspace, including through training and exercises later this year. And we're expanding our information sharing partnership across all warfighting domains. And meanwhile, our defense trade and technology cooperation continues to grow. We recently concluded an agreement to work together on air-launched unmanned aerial vehicles through our Defense Technology and Trade Initiative. And today we agreed to launch new supply chain cooperation measures that will let us more swiftly support each other's priority defense requirements. India continues to acquire key U.S. defense platforms, and that is forging important new ties between our defense industrial bases. We're doing all this because the United States supports India as a defense industry leader in the Indo-Pacific and a net provider of security in the region. And we all understand the challenges that we face there. The People's Republic of China is seeking to refashion the region and the international system more broadly in ways that serve its interests. And so I'm pleased that we've identified new opportunities to extend the operational reach of our militaries and to coordinate more closely together across the expanse of the Indo-Pacific. We welcome the Indian Navy's decision to join the Combined Maritime Forces Bahrain. And we've also committed to more high-end exercises together. Last summer, the Theodore Roosevelt Carrier Strike Group conducted the first ever combined anti-submarine warfare and air exercise with the Indian Navy and Air Force. And we're looking forward to more of this sort of cooperation as we expand the scope and the complexity of Tiger Triumph, which is our annual major tri-service exercise. And finally, we made commitments today to reinforce our ties with like-minded countries, including Japan, Australia, and our European allies and partners. Take, for example, the Quad's newly launched humanitarian assistance and disaster relief mechanism, which will bring together our defense and civilian disaster relief agencies to ensure that the Indo-Pacific is better prepared for future crises. Now, as two of the world's largest democracies, the United States and India are linked by more than our common interests. We're bound by our shared values and commitments, including ensuring that the Indo-Pacific stays on a path defined by the rule of law and freedom of the seas and respect for territorial integrity of sovereign states. Today's 2+2 Ministerial reflects our deep commitment to maintaining open channels of communication on a range of challenging issues. As strategic threats converge, especially following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, it is more important than ever that we stand together to defend our shared values and to preserve the international rules-based order. And so I believe that the investments that we've made together today will help to ensure that our shared vision of a secure, open, and prosperous Indo-Pacific region thrives in the decades ahead. Ministers, thank you for your partnership and for your leadership as we work together to build that future. It's great to have you with us, here with us, so thank you very much.
And now to Minister Singh.
Yeah. Secretary Austin, Secretary Blinken, Dr. Jaishankar ji, members of press, ladies and gentlemen. मैं सेक्रेटरीज और उनके डेलीगेशन और उनके स्टाफ के साथ जो हमारे बेहतरीन इंटरेक्शंस हुए हैं उसके लिए मैं उनको धन्यवाद देता हूं। मैं उन्हें तहे दिल से हमारे बाइलेटरल रिलेशंस को लेकर कमिटमेंट के लिए भी मैं उनकी
very appreciative of their comments. In the past, it shows that our relationships have expanded in scale, and we have had very meaningful talks this morning. It will help in the momentum and in also expanding and taking it forward. Both the nations are common and complementary, and we have shared goals which we would like to achieve, and we also have the shared will to achieve it. We have tried to see that we have talked on very many different aspects, and it's a very unique thing that as two big democracies of the world, we've had conversation on all the issues, and our views converge on each, and we hope to have a free, open, and inclusive rule-based order, which is a common vision that is shared by both the nations. Our partnership is based on Indo-Pacific, and we want to create peace and prosperity in the Indo-Pacific region. During the meeting, we also discussed about our neighbors, and we tried to make sure that our assessment is also shared. During this talk, we have talked about counterterrorism and talk about how this has been used against India. During our comprehensive engagement, we have had very comprehensive results, some of which are as follows, which would like to talk. The Department of Space and U.S. Department of Defense
स्पेस सिचुएशनल अवेयरनेस एग्रीमेंट यह भी संपन्न हुआ है। आने वाले समय में डिफेंस स्पेस और डिफेंस आर्टिफिशियल इंटेलिजेंस डायलॉग्स के बारे में एग्रीमेंट। तीसरा, कई अन्य इनिशिएटिव्स और एग्रीमेंट्स जो कि डिस्कशन फेज में हैं, उनमें सार्थक प्रगति हमारी मिलिट्री इंगेजमेंट्स के स्कोप और डेप्थ को और बढ़ाने को लेकर हुई है और इस पर हमारी सहमति भी बनी है। पैंडेमिक के बावजूद हमारे मिलिट्री टू मिलिट्री एक्सरसाइज में भी काफ़ी बढ़ोतरी हुई है और हमें इस बात की बेहद खुशी है कि भारत ने बहरीन में स्थित मल्टीलेटरल कंबाइंड मैरीटाइम फोर्स को एसोसिएट पार्टनर के रूप में ज्वाइन किया है। ये हमारे पश्चिमी इंडियन ओशन में रीजनल सिक्योरिटी कोऑपरेशन को यह मजबूत बनाएंगे। हम काम कासा के इम्प्लीमेंटेशन और बेका के प्रभावी ऑपरेशनलाइजेशन की दिशा में भी प्रगतिशील हैं। हमने रक्षा, साइबर, डिफेंस साइबर और स्पेशल फोर्सेस की फील्ड में और सहयोग बढ़ाने की भी बात की है। हमने लिमोआ और एचएडीआर के अंतर्गत ज्वाइंट एक्सरसाइज में लॉजिस्टिक्स कोऑपरेशन के स्कोप को एक्सपेंड करने के लिए भी बात की है। हम दोनों पक्ष हमारी स्पेशल ऑपरेशंस फोर्सेस के क्लोजर इंगेजमेंट की दिशा में भी आगे बढ़ने के प्रति पूरी तरह से आश्वस्त हैं। हमने डिफेंस ट्रेड एंड टेक्नोलॉजी इनिशिएटिव में स्पीडी डिसीजन और प्रोजेक्ट इम्प्लीमेंटेशन के लिए प्रोसेस और प्रोक्योरमेंट्स रिव्यू करने का भी निर्णय किया है। मैंने अमेरिकन कंपनीज को डिफेंस, एरोस्पेस और मेक फॉर इंडिया एंड द वर्ल्ड प्रोग्राम के लिए भी आमंत्रित किया है। हम यूएस कंपनीज के साथ को डेवलपमेंट और को प्रोडक्शन प्रपोज करते हैं। हमने यूएस डिफेंस कंपनीज को यूपी और तमिलनाडु के डिफेंस इंडस्ट्रियल कॉरिडोर में और इन्वेस्ट करने के लिए भी अनुरोध किया है। पैंडेमिक के मुश्किल समय में यूनाइटेड स्टेट्स की सरकार ने हमें काफ़ी सहयोग दिया था। हम इस अवसर पर अपनी डीप एप्रिसिएशन को भी व्यक्त करते हैं और इस सिलसिले में सेक्रेटरी ऑस्टिन और सेक्रेटरी ब्लिंकन की लीडरशिप को भी हम धन्यवाद देते हैं। आज की डिफेंस बाइलेटरल मीटिंग एवं 2+2 मीटिंग भारत और यूएस के बीच स्ट्रेटेजिक डिफेंस एंगेजमेंट को मजबूत करने के लिए बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण है और ये हमें और एरियाज ऑफ म्यूचुअल इंटरेस्ट के साथ में बेहतर काम करने के लिए और समर्थ बनाएगा। हमारा बढ़ता सहयोग ग्लोबल कॉमन्स को फ्रीली एक्सेस कराने के लिए और शांति और सुरक्षा को बनाए रखने के लिए भी यह महत्वपूर्ण होगा। मैं एक बार फिर से सेक्रेटरी ऑस्टिन और सेक्रेटरी ब्लिंकन को उनकी गर्मजोशी और इंडिया यूएस पार्टनरशिप को और बढ़ाने में महत्वपूर्ण सहयोग देने के लिए धन्यवाद देता हूं। हमने दोनों सेक्रेटरीज को म्यूचुअली कन्वीनियंट टाइम पर अगले 2+2 मिनिस्ट्रियल डायलॉग के लिए भी आमंत्रित किया है। धन्यवाद।
Secretary Blinken, Secretary Austin, Defense Minister Rajnath Singh Ji, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure to meet all of you at the conclusion of a productive and substantive 2+2 ministerial today. Earlier in the day, we participated in the virtual summit of our leaders, and we also met departmentally. These meetings are taking place at a time when the global order is facing multiple challenges and stresses. Obviously, a good part of my meeting with Secretary Blinken in the morning went to the ongoing conflict in Ukraine that has many ramifications. Even countries far away are worrying about energy security, food security, commodities prices, and logistics disruption. Now, this comes on top of the consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic with which the world has been struggling for the last 2 years. Quite apart from public health concerns and its economic impact, this has raised awareness about the need for reliable and resilient supply chains. Autonomously, the nature of globalization and the usage of technology has brought to fore concerns of trust and transparency. How to ensure a free, open, and inclusive Indo-Pacific was also on our agenda today. We spoke of developments in and around Afghanistan that have made their ripples felt well beyond. Our conversations also covered recent happenings in the Indian subcontinent. Strategic partnerships like those between India and the United States are built through shared interests, common values, and constant nurturing. It is natural that each of us will bring to the relationship our particular perspectives, experiences, and priorities. But when there is a mutual appreciation of the significance of our ties, there is also a desire to better understand each other's thinking. Our dialogue today, I believe, has helped in that regard. The report card of our bilateral cooperation is an impressive one. Defense Minister has already spoken of the great strides made in the field of defense and security. We also partner closely in counterterrorism and maritime security, making the world a much safer place. The integrated perspective that we brought to bear in this 2+2 format only underlines the gains made in different domains in recent times. The economic side of the story is particularly significant. Both trade and investment are steadily growing. We have had discussions today on both of them, as also on connectivity, infrastructure, digital issues, climate action, and energy. Our shared activities in space, science and technology, and health are also noteworthy. We see our cooperation as having a larger relevance for the Indo-Pacific. The bedrock of our relationship, as you would all agree, is its human element. It could be the students who come to universities, the flow of talent that defines our knowledge partnership, or indeed the technology and business relationships which promote innovation. They're all examples of the human bridge that connects our societies so uniquely. I look forward to highlighting this aspect tomorrow at an event in Harvard University, where I would have the pleasure of speaking along with Secretary Blinken. In a changing world, India-US ties have not only kept pace, but actually emerged as a major contributor to global peace, stability, and prosperity. This is not just the weight of our expanding partnership, but also the impact it makes on addressing global issues. Our vaccine cooperation can enhance its affordability and accessibility. Our B2B and G2G dealings can contribute to better connectivity and reliable supply chains. Our climate collaboration is underlined by the United States joining the International Solar Alliance and co-chairing the Coalition for Disaster Resilient Infrastructure. Challenges in the Indo-Pacific have also been a particular focus of our discussions. We appreciate the attention and energy devoted by the United States to the Quad. Its elevation and intensification in the last year benefits the entire Indo-Pacific. Indeed, the Quad has emerged as a powerful force of global good. So let me sum up our discussions in 3 broad points. 1, it has helped us today to strategize on mitigating the volatility and unpredictability that the world is currently experiencing. That will be naturally reflected in our policies. 2, it has encouraged us to think together on long-term challenges, especially in the Indo-Pacific. And 3, it has energized our collaborative endeavors to build what is emerging as a key bilateral relationship of our times. Thank you.
We'll now turn to questions. We'll take 4 questions, alternating 2 questions per delegation. We'll start with Rosalind Jordan of Al Jazeera English.
Ministers, secretaries, thank you. Keeping in mind that all 4 of you have talked about the deep friendship and alliance between the U.S. and India, I have several questions. First, for Secretary Blinken, isn't it problematic that after 48 days of war that India has yet to condemn Russia's invasion? What more can the U.S. do to persuade India to make what some would argue is a symbolic step, but still a critical one? And there are a number of reports suggesting that Moscow and Delhi are trying to work out some sort of currency exchange for future energy purchases. Did you tell Secretary Jaishankar that these could risk violations of not just current sanctions, but also risk violating CAATSA? Secretary Austin, this is a larger policy question. Has the U.S. missed an opportunity in the past 17 years since the beginning of this strategic partnership to replace Moscow as Delhi's choice for weapons, for military materiel, not just the training and the robust partnership that we see in the military sphere? And finally, for the ministers Jaishankar and Singh, why not condemn Russia's invasion? Wouldn't this best reflect India's foreign policy goals and international standing? And what is the leverage that the Indian government has to persuade Vladimir Putin that the carnage that we are seeing every day simply must not stop, that it's not helping the Ukrainian people, and that it's not helping the Russian people? Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm happy to start. I applaud the multi-part, multi-person question. A few things. First, I should note, before getting into the specifics of the question, that Prime Minister Modi, President Biden had a very warm and productive conversation today in their virtual summit. Covered a lot of ground, including some of the things that we mentioned: COVID-19, climate, strengthening the global economy, a free and open Indo-Pacific that we both aspire to. On Russia-Ukraine, they talked about ways of mitigating the profound impact that this is having on global food supplies and prices, commodity markets, and working together to achieve that. I would note, India has made very strong statements in New York at the UN, the minister before the Indian Parliament, condemning the killing of civilians in Ukraine, calling for an independent investigation of these atrocities. And I would also note that India is providing significant humanitarian assistance to the people of Ukraine, notably medicines, which are very necessary and in real demand. India has to make its own decisions about how it approaches this challenge. We, as a general proposition, are consulting with all of our allies and partners on the consequences of Putin's war, the atrocities being committed against the people of Ukraine. In our judgment, it is important that all countries, especially those with leverage, press Putin to end the war. And it's also important that democracies stand together and speak with one voice to defend the values that we share. And we do share profoundly the values of freedom, openness, independence, sovereignty, and those values need to apply everywhere. India's relationship with Russia was developed over decades at a time when the United States was not able to be a partner to India. Times have changed. Today, we are able and willing to be a partner of choice with India across virtually every realm: commerce, technology, education, and security. And that was very much the nature of the conversation that we had today. When it comes to oil purchases, sanctions, et cetera, I just note that there are carve-outs for energy purchases. Of course, we're encouraging countries not to purchase additional energy supplies from Russia. Every country is differently situated, has different needs, requirements, but we're looking to allies and partners not to increase their purchases of Russian energy.
Well, thanks, Roz. Regarding missed opportunities, of course, I can't say much about policy decisions that were made before my time. But what I can tell you is that President Biden truly values strong alliances and partnerships like the one that we have with India. And that's really what today is all about. It's about taking a strong relationship and making it even stronger, and working on those things that create interoperability and allow us to work together to promote the things that all of us have talked about. The issue of values is central to this relationship, and we'll continue to work to strengthen what's a very strong relationship, and so that we don't miss any opportunities going forward. So, thanks.
I think I probably answer for both of us. First of all, thank you for the advice and suggestions in your question. I prefer to do it my way and articulate it my way. Now, as Secretary Blinken has pointed out, we have made a number of statements which outline our position in the UN, in our parliament, and in other forums. And briefly, what those positions state is that we are against the conflict, we are for dialogue and diplomacy, we are for urgent cessation of violence, and we are prepared to contribute in whatever way to these objectives. I noticed you refer to oil purchases. If you are looking at energy purchases from Russia, I would suggest that your attention should be focused on Europe, which probably we do buy some energy which is necessary for our energy security. But I suspect, looking at the figures, probably our total purchases for the month would be less than what Europe does in an afternoon. So you might want to think about it.
We'll turn to Lalit Jha, Press Trust of India.
India being a tough neighborhood, seeking to diversify its do I need to repeat? Okay. Mr. Jaishankar, in your remarks, my second question is to Secretary Blinken and Secretary Austin. India, being in a tough neighborhood, is seeking to diversify its energy and military needs. As Prime Minister Modi says, the final goal is Atmanirbhar Bharat, which also means self-reliant India, and this includes energy independence. You know, US has played a key role in India getting food security through Green Revolution. In that context, my question to both of you is, what the United States is offering to help India achieve this goal in the field of both energy and military needs? Thank you.
So if I could respond to the first question, what are we doing to mitigate volatility and unpredictability that the world is currently experiencing? Well, let me start, there are a number of things which are happening in the world. Let me start with the Ukraine situation. I think part of what we are doing is to press for a cessation of hostilities, which I think everybody would agree would mitigate matters and clearly make the world less unpredictable. We're also addressing the humanitarian situation. In fact, we have, the Ukrainians have been in touch with us especially for the supply of medicines. We have already provided humanitarian relief to Ukraine, to some of the neighbors, and even as we speak, a shipment of medicines is being delivered or will be delivered very soon to Kiev. We have discussed the economic consequences as well. I mean, we are looking at it ourselves, but we've discussed it as partners. I think a big concern we have, and not just we, I think the world has, is of energy security, of rising prices, of increasing premiums, of limited supplies. So today you have to understand it is a legitimate concern of countries to ensure their energy security. But an equally big worry, which is emerging, is of food security. There are concerns across geographies of societies who are importing wheat or sugar or other foodstuff out of the conflict region. So we have discussed today, not just us, but I think the subject also came up in the virtual summit between Prime Minister Modi and President Biden about what could India do to stabilize the global economic situation. And we are quite willing, and in fact we've already started responding to the need for greater food supplies, especially wheat most of all, but to some degree sugar as well. At this moment, a number of countries are discussing with us the possibility of greater food supplies, including the World Food Program. So that's the Ukraine part of the global situation. But that's not the only problem that we face. I think the COVID has also left us with a lot of uncertainties and a lot of challenges to be addressed. Again, I think part of it is how do you construct more reliable and resilient supply chains? How do you increase trust and transparency? How do we work together on critical and emerging technologies like 5G? And again, we discussed an Indian initiative called Performance Linked Initiative, which would incentivize manufacturing in India. And I think it's very much in American interest to support it. We also spoke about how we could work together to help with the global health situation. How do we get a shot in every arm? How do we increase the distribution of vaccines? The other issue, again, which has added to global uncertainty is Afghanistan. And how do you stabilize the region? How do you, again, provide humanitarian assistance? We are, as you know, in the middle of providing 50,000 tons of wheat. How do you deal with the terrorism concerns that the world has in the Security Council, in FATF, etc.? And I would say, in a way, in terms of mitigating and stabilizing, the Quad itself is a great stabilizer. So that too is part of the contribution we are making towards a better world, and making that contribution in large measure through a partnership with the United States.
You want to start?
Yeah, so the question was, what are we offering to India in support of its defense security, I think was the question. As you heard in our earlier statements, we're working closely with India on a range of priorities to support India's security and its role as a net security provider. It's a leader in the region, and it actually exports security to the region, and we're grateful for that. Some of the things that we talked about, as we stated in our opening statements, information sharing, deeper cooperation in space and cyberspace, liaison exchanges, continuing to work together more frequently and in exercises, but also exercises of increasing complexity. So we're working with India on a number of things, and we think these things will add tremendous value to the region in terms of security.
And on the last part of the question on energy, first let me say what we're seeing across the board is that the Russian aggression against Ukraine is having profound impacts not only on the people of Ukraine, the brutalization of the country, but it is having global impacts, including, as we were talking about, on food availability and prices, and also on energy. And we've seen significant increases in price there as well. One of the important steps that President Biden took was to proceed with a coordinated release from strategic petroleum reserves that will continue over the next, for the part of the United States, over the next 6 months to ensure that there is adequate energy on world markets, both to have an impact on availability as well as on price, to deal with the disruptions caused by the Russian aggression. I think if that aggression stops, if the conflict stops, it will have a positive impact, both on energy availability and prices, as well as on food availability and food prices. More broadly, though, India is the third largest consumer of energy in the world. It's a big place, a big market. Electricity demand is projected to double by 2030. We've dramatically increased our own energy trade with India, diversifying its energy sources. Our energy exports to India now total about $11 billion a year. Ultimately, the most effective way to satisfy this growth, the needs of the Indian people, the Indian economy, is, of course, to honor the climate goals, the ambitious climate goals that India has set, including particularly the expansion of renewables. And again, I point you to the very important commitments that Prime Minister Modi made at the COP26. We are committed, for our part, to partnering in India's clean energy transition, and this needs to be a partnership. We have a responsibility, a historic responsibility, as well as a current responsibility in trying to make sure that we're helping to make available the technology, the financing, the support to help countries make that transition, to adapt, to build resilience in dealing with climate change and making sure that adequate supplies of energy are reaching their people. There's a long-standing strategic clean energy partnership that is co-led by our Department of Energy, the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas in India. That is deepening cooperation on energy efficiency and next-generation fuels. And we have the Quad. We've got a working group on climate that's partnering on green shipping corridors and on green technology. Here at the State Department, our own Energy Bureau has done a lot of work, including collaborative studies with Indian researchers on the most economical decarbonization pathways. And finally, I just note our Development Finance Corporation just announced a $500 million loan to First Solar, which will produce solar panel modules in southern India, furthering climate goals, diversifying solar supply chains. So in all these ways and more, we are working both to deal with the impact of the Russian aggression on energy, but much more broadly with this combination of helping India meet its energy needs while advancing together the vital climate agenda that we share.
Of Nikkei.
Thank you very much for taking my question. To Secretary Blinken, India plans to deploy S-400 missile defense system. Did you discuss this topic with your Indian counterparts today? Do you rule out the possibility of sanctioning India for its acquisition of S-400? To Secretary Austin, India is trying to diversify its procurement of military equipment and weapons by reducing reliance on Russia and purchasing more from other countries, including the United States. I'm wondering what steps the Biden administration will take to help India accelerate the diversification effort. Is it an option for the United States to provide a financial assistance to India to make U.S. systems more affordable? To Indian Foreign Minister Jaishankar, Russia has more and more aligned with China diplomatically, economically, and militarily. How much are you concerned about their alignment in terms of India's national security? With that concern, do you think India has to reduce reliance on Russia economically and militarily as soon as possible? Thank you.
I'm happy to start. So let me start by saying that we continue to urge all countries to avoid major new transactions for Russian weapon systems, particularly in light of what Russia is doing to Ukraine. We've not yet made a determination regarding potential sanctions or potential waivers under the CATSA law. But to come back to something I said a few moments ago, there is, of course, a long history and a long relationship between India and Russia, including when it comes to military equipment. That relationship took hold many years ago at a time when, as I said, we were not able to be a partner to India. And again, as I said, we are now both able and willing to be such a partner, to be a security partner of choice for India. That's one of the areas that we discussed in some detail today.
On the issue of future systems, we are engaged in active discussions with India on how to best support their modernization needs. And again, as we look at the future, we want to make sure that we maintain the ability to operate together. And so we look forward to those continued discussions. And it also includes a range of options that would make our systems more affordable. So this is work that will continue going forward, and again, look forward to continuing to have them as a strong and reliable partner.
Well, this seems to be my day to get a lot of advice and suggestions from the press, so thank you for joining that. But look, we watch what's happening in the world like any country does, and we draw our conclusions and make our assessments. And believe me, we have a decent sense of what is in our interest and know how to protect it and advance it. So I think part of what has changed is we have more options than we did before. I will look at us today. We are standing here for a 2+2 with a substantial defense collaboration which has happened in the last decade, which we have been discussing how to take forward. And this wasn't an option which was there for 40 years before that. So the world is changing. The world will keep changing. What we have to do in our profession is to watch it and see how your interests are best advanced in that. And I just want to pick up on the last, not this question, but the previous question which Secretary Blinken answered on the energy side, which is, given our energy security concerns, again, I don't want this whole subject to go off on a sort of a political note. Every country looks at its best options, and I think today an expanding India-US energy relationship, which, by the way, didn't exist some years ago. If my memory is right, you are the second largest LNG supplier to India, I think the fourth or the fifth largest crude oil supplier, a big partner in the renewable side, including the agreement which Secretary Blinken just mentioned. So we have, there is so much more going on in the world today, and a large part of it is really to fully explore the opportunities between India and the United States.
We'll take a final question from Pranay Upadhyay, ABP News.
Hello, Ministers. My first question is directed to the Defense Ministers. रक्षा मंत्री जी, सबसे पहले तो आपसे जानना चाहेंगे कि भारत और अमेरिका के बीच में मेजर डिफेंस पार्टनरशिप एग्रीमेंट साइन होने के बाद आगे इसका क्या रोड मैप हो सकता है, इस पर आज आपकी क्या बात हुई और अमेरिका किस तरीके से भारत के रक्षा आधुनिकीकरण में भूमिका निभाने के लिए तैयार हुआ है? And my question to Secretary Austin, in the recent past, we have seen that the US military supply to countries like Pakistan has been used against Indian interest. So when you say that US is ready to forge greater defense cooperation with India, how have you assured India for the greater solidarity and safeguarding the Indian interest? And which are the critical and emerging technologies US is ready to offer India to strengthen the India's defense and security interests? And to Secretary Austin, India's neighborhood right now is going through a deep economic distress, especially in countries like Sri Lanka and other small countries in South Asia. How US is trying to cooperate with India to have a greater stability in the region as far as the economic stability in the post-COVID world?
पहले मैं रिप्लाई करना चाहूँगा कि जो आपने ये कहा है कि भारत और अमेरिका के बीच रिलेशंस को लेकर, तो संबंध में मुझे कहना है कि भारत और अमेरिका के बीच एक स्ट्रेटजिक रिलेशनशिप है, क्योंकि दोनों एक दूसरे के स्ट्रेटजिक पार्टनर हैं। और मैंने यह आग्रह किया है अमेरिका से कि अमेरिका आकर भारत में यहाँ पर फोकस करे विशेष रूप से को डेवलपमेंट और को प्रोडक्शन पर। यहाँ की जो OEMs हैं वो भारत में आएँ, उनका स्वागत है, क्योंकि भारत ने का ये एक निर्णय है मेक इन इंडिया और मेक फॉर द वर्ल्ड। भारत को यदि हम सेल्फ रिलायंट बनाना चाहते हैं तो।
So we're proud of the fact that today India has at its inventory a number of platforms that have, we believe, and I think my colleagues would affirm, that have performed very, very reliably. And so today what we talked about was how we're going to increase our sharing of information, how we're going to deepen our cooperation in space and cyberspace. And again, I think, space and cyberspace are two warfighting domains that we want to make sure we continue to develop our own capabilities, but also help our partners to develop capabilities. And I think, you know, those are the types of things that I think will cause us to be dominant in any battle space. So, you know, we really look forward to developing this relationship a lot more, and also continuing to work together with our counterparts here, our colleagues in high-end, complex operations. And that's how really you strengthen that trust and build on capability. So.
And just on the challenges facing the region, this was very much a subject of our conversations today and an ongoing conversation. Let me say a couple of things about that. First, we are trying to deal together with a number of the immediate crises that countries are facing around the world, but including in the Indo-Pacific, including some of India's closest neighbors. When it comes to COVID-19, we've been working through the Quad partnership to effectively deliver hundreds of millions of doses of vaccine. We're now deepening our work to make sure that we're getting shots into arms, that we're supporting healthcare workers, and that we are building strong supply chains, both for the immediate challenge and going forward. Similarly, we talked about this earlier. We're very focused on the impact that the Russian aggression in Ukraine is having on food prices and food availability, and that affects countries in the region as well. India is taking steps and looking at additional steps when it comes to making food stocks more widely available. We're doing the same. We're increasing financing to the World Food Program, the Food and Agricultural Organization. We're looking at what we can do to incentivize the increased production of fertilizers so that even as we get beyond this year's crops, as people are thinking about next year's, yields can be sustained and won't decrease, which would further interrupt supply and raise prices. So in all these areas, we're collaborating together. Similarly on energy, as we just discussed. More broadly, one of the things that we're talking about is an initiative that President Biden will launch in the weeks ahead, the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. And there, working together with countries in the region, we can have a very positive effect and very positive impact on things like building supply chain resilience in ways that actually benefit the economies of countries in the region, on infrastructure investment, which is so needed and so critical, where India and the United States can work together, on making available green technology as part of that effort, building out global health security and the necessary infrastructure that goes with that, working together on digital trade, which is increasingly a part of the lives of people in all of our countries and has tremendous potential, including in a number of these neighboring countries. So in all these ways and more, we are working not only individually, but increasingly we're working together to make sure that some of the benefits of the changing economy can be brought to these countries, as well as helping them to deal with many of the challenges that we're facing.
Thank you, Your Excellencies. This concludes the press availability.